Okay, picture this. It's 10,000 BC. You're a human. Life is rough. You've got no Netflix, no takeout, no running water, and someone in your tribe just found a pile of fruit that's been sitting in the sun for a week. Smells absolutely terrible, looks borderline criminal, and someone drank it. That, my friend, is how alcohol was born. Except, here's the thing. It actually goes back way further than that. Like, embarrassingly further. Like, 80 million years further. And the story of how humans discovered, fell in love with, and eventually built entire civilizations around alcohol is one of the strangest, funniest, and most important stories in all of human history. So buckle up. Before we get to humans, we need to talk about our ancestors. And no, I don't mean your grandfather. I mean primates, monkeys, apes, the whole family. See, scientists have a theory called, and I love this name, the drunken monkey hypothesis. Here's the idea. Millions of years ago, our primate ancestors lived in tropical forests, and their main food source was fruit. Simple enough, right? But here's the problem. Ripe fruit is hard to find. The forest is huge, and you don't exactly have Google Maps. So how do you find it? You follow the smell. And here's where it gets interesting. When fruit gets overripe and starts to ferment, it produces ethanol, which is the same type of alcohol in your beer, your wine, your cocktails. And ethanol has a very strong smell that travels far through the air. So our ancestors basically evolved to be attracted to the smell of alcohol, because alcohol smell meant ripe fruit, which meant calories, which meant survival. Biologist Robert Dudley from UC Berkeley, the guy who came up with this theory, basically said that our whole relationship with alcohol started as a GPS system for finding food. We weren't getting drunk, we were navigating. But then, as things always go with humans, we took it way too far. So fast forward a few million years. Humans are now walking upright, using tools, and generally acting like they own the place. And here's where alcohol gets officially discovered, completely by accident. Nobody sat down one day and thought, you know what? I'm going to invent a drink that makes people dance badly and say things they regret. It just happened. The most likely story? Early humans were storing food, grains, fruit, honey, in containers. They forgot about some of it. Yeast from the air got in. The sugars started fermenting. And a few days later, someone opened that container and found something that smelled weird, looked weird, and felt very, very different going down. And instead of throwing it away, they went back for more. Scientists actually found the oldest evidence of this in a cave near Haifa, Israel. A group called the Natufians, semi-nomadic hunter-gatherers who lived about 13,000 years ago, left behind stone mortars with the residue of wheat and barley beer still inside. 13,000 years ago. But here's the part that nobody talks about. What were they doing with this beer? They weren't partying. They weren't celebrating. They were at a funeral. Researchers believe the Natufians brewed beer specifically for ritual feasts to honor their dead. The oldest bar in human history was basically a graveyard. Think about that next time you crack open a drink. Okay, so humans discovered alcohol. Great. But why did they keep drinking it? Here's a fact that sounds completely backwards until you think about it. For most of human history, alcohol was healthier than water. Yes, you heard that right. Ancient water sources were contaminated. Rivers and wells were full of bacteria, parasites, and things that would absolutely ruin your week or end your life. There was no water treatment, no filtration, no boiling warnings. But alcohol? Alcohol kills bacteria. Beer and wine were essentially self-sanitizing drinks. The fermentation process, the acidity, the alcohol content, all of it made these drinks far safer than the water people had access to. In fact, historians noted that ancient Greek and Roman texts barely mention water as a common drink. The Bible barely mentions it either.
For thousands of years across multiple civilizations, the default daily drink wasn't water, it was weak beer or wine. Medieval people, adults, children, monks, knights, all drank ale as a daily staple. Not to get drunk, just to stay alive. Alcohol was literally called aqua vitae in the Middle Ages, which means water of life. So yes, for thousands of years, humans drank alcohol the way we drink water today. Because for thousands of years, alcohol basically was water. Alright, here's where things get genuinely mind-bending. You know the story of how civilization started, right? Humans were wandering around as hunter-gatherers. Then they figured out farming. They settled down. They built villages, then cities, then empires. The standard story says farming came first and then beer was a happy bonus. But a growing number of archaeologists now think it happened the other way around. What if humans started farming because they wanted beer? This is called the beer before bread hypothesis, and the evidence is actually pretty compelling. Remember those Natufians in Israel? The ones having funeral beers 13,000 years ago? Researchers believe they were brewing beer before they had proper agriculture. They were gathering wild grains specifically to ferment them. And some scientists argue that the desire for a stable, reliable supply of alcohol is what motivated early humans to start planting, harvesting, and settling in one place. In other words, we didn't discover farming and then accidentally make beer. We may have invented farming because we wanted beer.
For thousands of years, alcohol was relatively mild. Beer and wine can only ferment so far naturally. The yeast eventually dies off, putting a natural cap on how strong the drink gets. But then, somewhere around the Middle Ages, humans figured out distillation, and everything changed. The first major book on distillation was published in 1500. By the 1600s, the average European had access to gin and rum, drinks many, many times stronger than anything their ancestors had ever consumed. Suddenly, alcohol went from being a daily practical necessity to being something that could genuinely destroy you. The same thing that once kept people alive was now causing a completely new category of problems. And yet, humans kept drinking. Because of course they did. Because as Robert Dudley, the drunken monkey guy, pointed out, our brains were wired millions of years ago to seek out this stuff. Our ancient attraction to trace ethanol now meets potent concentrated alcohol, and our brains haven't caught up yet. We're still, in some ways, just monkeys following the smell of fermented fruit. So let's bring it home. Humans didn't discover alcohol. We were born into it, literally wired by evolution to seek it out. The first intentional beer was brewed 13,000 years ago at a funeral in a cave in Israel. For most of human history, alcohol was safer than water, and the desire for beer may have been the reason humans started farming in the first place, which means alcohol might be directly responsible for the existence of civilization as we know it. So next time someone tells you that drinking is a waste of time, you can tell them it literally built the world. If you found that as wild as I did, stick around and don't forget to press that like and subscribe button, because next time we're asking another question nobody thinks to ask. And trust me, you're going to want to know the answer.